Hey, we don't own any of this shit. Squad.
I want to preface by saying this. Star Wars, to me, is one of the greatest American exports of pop culture, period. Billions of dollars made, hundreds of millions of dedicated fans, and a universe that captured the hearts of many artists that further expanded it. It's 2016, and it's been nearly 40 years since the release of A New Hope, or known simply as Star Wars at the time. Like the Beatles, its impact on society could not be stressed enough. I will take my time to judge the saga in its own light, because to me, it is unfair to judge a Star Wars film as any other film. I want to address the issues on the prequels. Yes, the romance between Anakin and Padme felt like a C-movie plot with a plethora of cringeworthy dialogue. There was more than enough material between the two actors to know it simply wasn't working. The chemistry was less than flat. But George Lucas just kept trying to sell us the snake oil. I mean, for God's sakes, there were new villains in each of the prequels I held close to my memories, with such unique design and special characteristics. Darth Maul, Count Dooku, General Grievous. It was stacked. But where was the buildup for really any of these villains? We'll see Maul working alongside the Emperor, fighting Qui-Gon and Tatooine early on. But as a new viewer, there was no motivation other than, he's good, he's bad. Okay, well Dooku's mentioned maybe once or twice early in Attack of the Clones, and then he reveals himself seemingly out of nowhere, 3/4 into the movie. And I'm supposed to care. Grievous, on the other hand, had this crazy design. And I'll never forget the crazy... Who is this guy again? And that seems to be the biggest issues with the prequels. Very memorable sets and character designs, and yet no development to let us, the audience, fully realize what Lucas was throwing at us. There was slow pacing throughout the Naboo sequences, convoluted and nonsensical political drama throughout Episode 2, and the feeling that Revenge of the Sith was attempting to unleash the enveloping melodrama in the previous episodes. But wow! Episode 3 was such a ride, even with its uneven plot threads. After all, Star Wars is a space opera, and with all the issues I had with the prequels, I still enjoyed a good amount of the segments of it, even more so than the originals. Whoa. Pump the brakes, you say. Okay. For one, the lore of the prequels drew me in immediately. I thought Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were awesome characters from the get-go. The onset chemistry between the two, and the conclusion of their human relationship as Obi-Wan screams in pain watching his master slain. Now that's what I'm talking about. People complain about child Anakin in Episode 1, but even with my general annoyances, I was charmed watching him speed to victory during the pod race. It was one of the most memorable scenes from the series. And his victory was really the culmination of his entire life up to this point. He and his mother were born into slavery. And think about that for a second. He most likely never felt that in his life, it was truly worth living up for. After all, he used his Force powers to not only win a race that humans could even complete, but the Force also freed him from his chains. So sure, this bratty kid got on our nerves from time to time. And in the context of the situation, he was taken from a strange religious guardian that felt and believed that he was the chosen one. And this leads us to the second movie, Attack of the Clones. In my opinion, this was the worst Star Wars movie I had ever seen. Not enough could be said about the forced relationship between Padme and Anakin, the weird Sherlock Holmes-esque detective story Obi-Wan had found himself in, and this final video game third act. The clones were nearly unstoppable, and nothing felt truly at stake until Yoda became a badass and came into the picture at the end of the movie. And yet, here I am, remembering how much I was charmed between Anakin and Obi-Wan's banter between the other. Here's a situation where it felt like it was two brothers, where I felt the love, and I felt the frustration between the two characters. Like Obi-Wan said about Annie, he's always on the move. I couldn't find most things believable about Attack of the Clones, but Ewan McGregor's superior acting chops made Hayden better when they were together. Okay, so here we are with the final act of the prequels. Right away, I was let in with blistering trumpets by John Williams and some of the best CGI I had ever seen before in theaters. Lucas seemed eager early on to put his Johnson on the table. You guys don't think I can make an action movie? Bam, Episode 3. Seriously, if you appreciate the craft of music, just listen to the rising tides of Korra that reverberates in this series. That's when you know some serious shit is going down. the volume and the diversity of the lightsaber battles, the execution of Order 66, and the tragedy of Darth Vader. Yes, Anakin was a brat and a creep, but as poorly as Lucas did in explaining his story to the fans, we must dig deeper. Okay, to recap, Anakin was taken away at a young age from a slave background. He loses the only person that trusts him from the get-go to Darth Maul. And his entire career as a Jedi is deemed not trustworthy from the Jedi Council. A self-fulfilled prophecy, pun intended, friends. So I was somehow convinced by young Vader, or maybe I convinced myself. Whatever it was, I believe Anakin was ready to let go of everything to save the only person he loved, and the only person that he had completely entrusted. The hardcore fans are quick to point out how easy it is his transition was to being seduced to the dark side. Well, I urge you to look again. This was a long time coming from the beginning. And seeing Mace Windu threaten to break the Jedi code that he was indoctrinated in was truly the final straw. Anakin felt like he didn't know who he was anymore. And the very organization that had been defending had betrayed him as well. And I was moved alone by what this could mean for his future. So we shoot to the end to see him fight the most climactic lightsaber duel in the series. And yes, Anakin had eventually lost everything except for his new empire. A lot of that was due to his personal responsibility, but ignoring external factors would be pretty irresponsible. Overall, I felt like watching the prequel trilogy for the umpteenth time was still worth it. Star Wars has this aura about the lore that you can't almost compare it to any other film. If you watch the originals, you might argue that the writing isn't as solid, but take those nostalgia glasses off for a second and put down those pitchforks, please. A good amount of dialogue in A New Hope was to be desired for. Yeah, C-3PO accounted for much of that. And where was the emotional breakdown towards the death of Luke's caretakers? Hamill's acting didn't even start coming to form until Return of a Jedi. And on that matter, that Ewok section felt like odd filler that hasn't gotten any more forgiving over the years. Look. I'm not here to rip on the trilogy because I hold so many fond memories of those films. But I want to be fair. And in all fairness, the prequels weren't half bad. They were films that needed much improvement in many areas, don't get me wrong. But in my opinion, they have its place in the franchise. I was touched when I finally gave them that second chance. So I hope you will be as well. May the Force be with you.
Will I ever see you again?
What does your heart tell you?
I hope so. Yes. I guess.
Then we will see each other again.
I will come back and free you, Mom. I promise.
Now, be brave and don't look back. Don't look back.